Hey y'all, I am at one of my favorite coffee shops, just enjoying my day, and I have a book to share with you. And I picked it up at my public library, and I think it's pretty fabulous. It's called Faries by Patricia Saxton, and it's one of those really fun books it's a make-believe story, so it's fantasy, but they make it look like a nonfiction book. So look at that beautiful title page, Faries. I'm underneath a plant. You guys should see this. It's like a tree in here. Isn't that fun? This place is nice and cozy and set up for some of my favorite activities. So check this page out. It's so cool. It's like a page got torn out of an old dictionary. It says fairies, N, which is for noun, and then P-L, which is for plural, fairies, because fairies are, I guess you would consider them things. It says a tiny being in human form, clever, playful, and possessing magical powers, guardians of nature, with a soft spot for children, animals, and chocolate. Also, fairy, fae, all spelled differently. Collectively, we folk or fair folk. And then it says synonyms, which are words that mean about the same thing. Brownie, pixie, sprite. Fairy is the most common name. A good fairy helped your flowers grow tall. A mischievous fairy hid my shoes. A brownie is known for its good nature and generally appears at night to do household tasks. Perhaps the brownies will come and tidy the kitchen tonight. Sprite suggests a fairy with a pleasing childlike appearance, admired for lightness of movement. She's as agile as a little sprite. Pixies are especially cheerful and impish. I do believe a pixie has led us. And then we get to start. I love the illustrations too. Fairyland. Fairies live in what's often called fairyland, a place that some people think is imaginary, but of course it isn't imaginary at all. It's really quite real. You see, there's our world, the one where we eat breakfast and go to school and play basketball, and there's the magical world where fairies live. The two worlds are only separated by a hidden veil, a kind of invisible door that may look like a patch of fog or a flicker of light. So if you dare to believe and step through that invisible veil, you will find yourself in an entirely new place, alive with mystical creatures, fairy dust, and magic. And then there's this page on finding fairies. I'm making a video right now. This one has a famous fairy quote from a famous book. It says, I do believe in fairies. I do believe in fairies. I do believe in fairies. I do. And Peter Pan said that. And if you know the story, he was trying to save the Tinkerbell. And so then this book is so cool. This has a list of famous fairies. Tinkerbell, the Sugar Plum Fairy, Oberon, Puck, Tooth Fairy, Fairy Godmother. So in all kinds of stories in human history, there have been fairies across cultures and times. And so when we see these creatures in stories, they mean something. Look at that beautiful illustration. And this fairy has butterfly wings. And then this is a little tag with a quote by C.S. Lewis. Someday you will be old enough to start reading fairy tales again. C.S. Lewis. He's a famous theologian, actually. Most of the time, though, I'm just reading this section right here. Most of the time, though, you'll hear a fairy before you see one. A whisper, a giggle, the faint sound of chattering, or the tinkling of bells. You might also hear a whoosh and a fluttering of wings and think it is a bird. Then there's a section, What Fairies Do. And in lots of different stories, fairies take on different characters, because Tinkerbell's a pretty famous character. She's known for being a little bit mischievous or naughty. And then there are other fairies, like fairy tales, that maybe are powerful. And then more recently, you guys may have seen the movie Maleficent, who is more of a fae type of a character, very strong warrior. Then, oh, this is funny. There's this little section that looks like it's from a field book, and it's signs that fairies may be near. Uncontrollable giggles for no reason. So if that happens in the middle school and I hear uncontrollable giggling, might mean there are fairies in the classroom. Small glowing globes in the air, feeling a tickle on your arm, tummy, or neck. Mushrooms growing in a full circle. Sounds very scientific, right? Oh, hey, there's a interesting drawing of a unicorn. Well, now that we have seen each other, said the unicorn, if you'll believe in me, I'll believe in you. Lewis Carroll, Through the Looking Glass. That's an Alice in Wonderland story. Fairy communities. Earth fairies. So it has a whole section about earth fairies. And then it has air fairies. So I'm guessing they use the elements to come up with these different types of fairies. Water fairies. Now this makes me think about the book that we read about unicorns and how they had different unicorns for different regions. Fire fairies. This book has different types of fairies for the elements. And then, oh, here's another section, fairy secrets. And ooh, fairy language. I never really thought about that. Fairies can understand every language spoken on the land or sea and can speak easily with all creatures, even you and me. Of course, they do have their own language, which they speak fluently from the day they are born. People find it nearly impossible to learn, but still, you can try. Here are a few words you'll want to know in case you meet a fairy. A gook. Hello. That's funny. Fairy medicine? That's interesting. And then we're almost to the end. It has fairy celebrations and then how to please a fairy. Look at her, she's writing. Do you think that's the tooth fairy? I don't know, a lot of kids write to the tooth fairy. Have you ever written to the tooth fairy, Joe? And that is the end of this book. But it's a very fun book. I encourage you to check it out and have fun with it. And you might want to write your own book about fairies or another type of fantasy creature. So consider what fairies mean if you're reading them in stories, and also how you might be able to use them in your own stories that you write.